Hey guys, tonight we step into a place where the air is cold, the walls are damp, and the door behind you doesn't just close, it decides things for you. You feel the weight of stone all around, pressing in slowly, like the room itself is watching you adjust. And just so you know, yeah, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and local time down in the comments. I always like seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The door shuts behind you with a heavy, final sound. Not loud, just certain. You stand there for a moment, not moving, not reacting because your mind is still catching up to what just happened. 1 second you're standing in a corridor, guided forward without much explanation, and the next, you're here. Inside. Alone. The space around you is smaller than you expected. Not impossibly tight, but close enough that every step feels measured. The walls are made of rough stone, uneven, cold to the touch, even from a distance. You don't need to reach out to know that. You can feel it, that quiet chill that settles into your skin without asking permission. You take a slow breath. The air is heavier than normal. Not suffocating, just thick, like it hasn't moved properly in a long time. You turn slightly, your eyes adjusting to the dimness. There's no real light source. Just a faint glow leaking in from somewhere above, maybe a narrow slit in the wall, maybe a gap you can't fully see. It's enough to outline shapes, but not enough to give clarity. Everything feels blurred, soft at the edges, uncertain. You take a step forward. The sound of your movement echoes more than it should, bouncing lightly off the stone, reminding you just how enclosed this place is. You stop, because there's nowhere specific to go. No furniture, no clear purpose to the space beyond one thing, holding you. In many medieval prisons, cells were intentionally simple bare stone enclosures, designed more for containment than comfort. Some were underground, some built into castle walls, but most shared one thing in common: they weren't meant to be lived in. Historians still argue how standardized these conditions were across regions, but descriptions often point to the same idea. These places were functional, not humane. You turn slowly, taking in the full space. A few steps one way, a few steps the other. That's it. You reach out, your fingers brushing lightly against the wall. It's colder than you expected. Damp, the texture uneven, small ridges and cracks pressing back against your skin. You pull your hand away slowly, because that single touch tells you everything you need to know. This place holds on to moisture, holds on to cold, and probably holds on to time. You glance toward the door, heavy wood reinforced with metal bands. No handle on your side, no control. You take another slow breath. Inhale, exhale, because right now there's nothing to do. No instructions, no explanation, just wait. A faint sound reaches you, distant, almost easy to ignore. You pause, listening more carefully. It's not a voice, not exactly. More like movement, or maybe just the building settling. It's hard to tell, and that uncertainty makes it feel more noticeable. A strange thought drifts through your mind, one that feels oddly specific. In some historical accounts, prisoners were often placed in cells with little interaction, left alone for long periods with minimal communication. Historians still argue whether this isolation was intentional or simply a result of limited resources, but the effect was the same. Silence became part of the experience. You shift your weight slightly, your body adjusting to the stillness. Because standing here without movement feels unnatural, but moving doesn't change anything. You take a few steps again, slower this time, testing the space, mapping it out in your mind. One wall, another, the door, back again. A loop, small, contained. You stop near the center, your arms resting loosely at your sides, your posture relaxing just enough to conserve energy. Because already, your body is starting to understand something your mind is still catching up to. This isn't temporary, not in the way you're used to. Time here doesn't move the same way. There are no clocks, no markers, no clear transitions between moments, just a slow, steady continuation. You lean your head back slightly, your gaze drifting upward toward that faint source of light. It doesn't change, doesn't flicker, just stays, constant. A quiet reminder that the world outside still exists, even if you can't reach it. Another faint sound reaches you, this time a little clearer, a soft scrape, Then nothing. You don't move. Because reacting doesn't help. Understanding does. And right now, understanding comes slowly, piece by piece. You lower your gaze again, your breathing steady, your thoughts settling into a calmer rhythm. Inhale, exhale. Because panic doesn't belong here. It burns too quickly. And this place moves too slowly for that. You run your fingers lightly along your arm, grounding yourself, reminding yourself that you're still present, still aware, still in control of something if not your surroundings. Then at least your response to them. And as you stand there, your senses adjusting, your expectations shifting, your mind beginning to accept what your body already knows, you begin to understand something important. This isn't about escape, not right now. It's about endurance. About learning how to exist in a space that doesn't care about your comfort, your habits, or your expectations. Because here, those things don't matter. Only one thing does: getting through it. You remain standing for a moment, your body still adjusting to the weight of the space around you. The silence hasn't changed, the air hasn't changed, but your awareness of both has. You take a slow breath, then another, letting your chest rise and fall in that steady rhythm. Because here, breathing becomes something you notice more. Not because it's difficult, but because everything else is so still. Inhale. Exhale. You begin to move again, this time more slowly, more deliberately. Your steps trace the edges of the cell, your hand occasionally brushing against the wall, not out of curiosity now, but to map the space, to understand it in a way your eyes can't fully manage in this dim light. The stone is uneven, cold, slightly damp in certain places. Your fingers pick up those details without effort, and each small detail builds a clearer picture. This place wasn't built for comfort. It wasn't built for long stays either, at least not in the way you'd define living. It was built to hold, to contain. You pause near one corner, your foot brushing against something different. Not stone, softer. You shift your weight slightly and crouch down, your hand reaching out cautiously. It's straw, loose, scattered unevenly across part of the floor. You run your fingers through it lightly, dry in some places, damp in others. Rough, uninviting, but clearly intentional. In many medieval prison cells, straw was used as a basic form of bedding, if it could be called that. It provided minimal insulation from the cold ground and a slightly softer surface than bare stone. Historians still argue how frequently it was replaced or maintained, but most agree it wasn't cleaned often. You sit back slightly on your heels, your hands still resting in the straw for a moment longer than you expected. Because this is where you would rest. Not a bed, not even a proper mat. Just this. You withdraw your hands slowly, standing back up, your movements careful, because now the idea of lying down feels different. Not impossible, but not appealing either. You step back toward the center of the cell, your gaze drifting across the space again. The walls, the door, the faint light above, and now the straw. Everything has a purpose, even if that purpose is minimal. A faint sound reaches you again, this time slightly clearer. A low murmur, or maybe just air moving through a distant corridor. You tilt your head slightly, listening, because your ears are beginning to adjust too, picking up details that would have been lost before. In some medieval prisons, cells were located close enough to one another that prisoners could sometimes hear each other through walls, through small openings, or simply through the structure of the building itself. Historians still argue how common communication between prisoners was, but one thing is certain: you were rarely completely alone. You straighten slightly, your posture shifting as you listen more carefully. There it is again, faint, unclear, but present. You don't respond, not yet, because you don't know what it is, or who it might be. You take a slow breath, letting your body settle again, your awareness expanding just enough to include these new details without becoming overwhelmed by them. Because everything here comes in layers. First the space, then the air, then the sounds, each one revealing itself slowly. You step toward the straw again, this time more deliberately. You lower yourself carefully, sitting down on it, testing its texture beneath your weight. It shifts slightly, compresses unevenly. Not comfortable, but not unbearable. You adjust your position, trying to find a spot that feels less damp, less uneven. It takes a moment, but eventually you settle, your body adapts, because it has to. You lean back slightly, your shoulders brushing lightly against the cold wall behind you. The contrast is immediate. The straw beneath you. The straw beneath you. The stone behind you. Two extremes. Neither ideal, but together manageable. You take another slow breath. Inhale. Exhale. The air still carries that faint heaviness, but now it feels more familiar, less intrusive, more expected. A strange thought drifts through your mind, something oddly specific again. In some accounts, straw bedding in prisons wasn't just for comfort. It also absorbed moisture and waste, acting as a crude way to manage the conditions inside small, enclosed spaces. Historians still argue how effective this was, but the idea fits with everything you've seen so far. Nothing here is perfect. Everything is improvised. You shift slightly, pulling your legs closer, conserving warmth without even thinking about it. Because the cold is subtle, but constant. It doesn't demand attention. It just stays, slowly working its way into your muscles, your joints, your posture. You rest your hands loosely on your knees, your fingers relaxed, your breathing steady, and for a moment, everything feels still again. Not peaceful, but stable. You glance toward the door once more, unmoving, unchanging. A reminder of what you can't control. Then your gaze drifts upward again, toward that faint line of light. Still there, still distant. Another faint sound reaches you. This time, you're certain. Not just movement, not just air, something else. A presence. You don't react outwardly, but inwardly you notice, because now you understand something new. This place isn't empty, it just feels that way at first. And as you sit there, your body adjusting to the straw, your senses adapting to the dimness, your mind quietly processing each new detail without resistance, you begin to understand something important. Survival here isn't about finding comfort, it's about finding balance between what you have and what you need, because they're not the same, and they never will be. You remain seated on the straw, your body slowly settling into a position that feels acceptable, not comfortable, but acceptable. And that difference matters more than you expected, because here, comfort isn't something you reach for, it's something you quietly redefine. You adjust your weight slightly, the straw shifting beneath you with a soft, uneven rustle. Some parts feel dry, others slightly damp, and your body instinctively tries to avoid the colder patches. Small movements, careful adjustments, because even tiny improvements make a difference now. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, and then it hits you. Not suddenly, not like a shock, but like something that was always there, waiting for you to notice. The smell. You pause, your breathing becoming just a little more aware, because now that you've settled, now that you're no longer distracted by movement or exploration, your senses begin to sharpen, and the air reveals itself more clearly. It's not one single scent, it's layers. Damp stone, old straw, something stale, something heavier. You inhale again, slower this time, as if that might change what you're experiencing. It doesn't. Because this isn't something you can avoid. It's everywhere. In many medieval prison cells, waste was not always removed regularly, especially in lower status holding areas. Prisoners often had no choice but to relieve themselves within the same space where they ate, slept, and waited. Historians still argue how frequently cells were cleaned, but most accounts agree. Conditions were far from sanitary. You exhale slowly, your body reacting in subtle ways. A slight shift, a small tightening in your posture. Not dramatic, just instinctive, because this is something your body recognizes as wrong, unclean, uncomfortable, and yet unavoidable. You bring a hand lightly to your face for a moment, not covering your nose, just grounding yourself. Because reacting too strongly doesn't help, it only makes it harder. A strange thought drifts into your mind, something oddly practical. The human brain, when exposed to constant smells, begins to adapt over time, reducing sensitivity so that the scent becomes less noticeable. Historians still argue how quickly this adaptation occurred in places like this, but the principle itself is simple. You get used to it. You lower your hands slowly, your breathing steadying again. Inhale, exhale. The smell doesn't disappear, but it softens. Or maybe your awareness of it changes. You shift slightly, adjusting your position again, your body trying to find that balance between avoiding discomfort and conserving energy, because constant movement isn't sustainable, and stillness is easier. You lean your head back against the stone wall, your eyes half closing as you let your body relax just a little. The cold seeps through the back of your shoulders. The straw presses unevenly beneath you. The air remains heavy, and yet you stay, because there's nowhere else to go. Another faint sound reaches you, this time clearer than before. A low cough, distant, but unmistakable. You open your eyes slightly, your attention sharpening, because now, the presence you sensed earlier feels more real, more defined. You don't move, you don't respond, but you listen. Because listening doesn't cost energy, it doesn't expose you, it just informs. The sound fades quickly, replaced again by that steady, quiet stillness. But now, you know, you're not alone. Not completely. You shift your gaze toward the wall beside you, your mind briefly imagining what lies beyond it. Another cell, another space like this, another person, sitting, waiting, adjusting, just like you. A strange sense of connection settles in, not comforting, not reassuring, but shared. Because whatever you're experiencing, someone else is too. You pull your knees in slightly, your body curling inward just enough to conserve warmth, your hands resting loosely against your legs. Because the cold has gone away. It's just become part of the background, like the smell, like the silence, like everything else. You take another slow breath, inhale, exhale, and this time you notice something different. Your reaction is smaller, quieter, less immediate, because your body is already adapting, already adjusting, already finding ways to exist within this environment without constant resistance. You run your fingers lightly through the straw again, not searching for anything, just feeling the texture, grounding yourself in something physical, because sensation helps. It keeps your mind anchored, prevents it from drifting too far into discomfort. And as you sit there, your senses no longer overwhelmed but quietly aware, your body no longer resisting but slowly adjusting, you begin to understand something important. The hardest part isn't the discomfort itself, it's the first moment you fully notice it. After that, your mind begins to adapt, your body begins to adjust, and what once felt unbearable becomes something you can endure. Even here, even in a place like this, you remain where you are, your body settled into the straw, your breathing steady and quiet. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm feels natural now, not something you have to think about, just something that continues on its own, even here. The smell still lingers, the cold still presses in, the silence still surrounds you, but none of it feels as sharp as it did before, because you've begun to adjust, and that adjustment creates a strange kind of space in your mind, one where you can finally notice something else. Your body. You shift slightly, your muscles responding with a faint stiffness you didn't fully notice until now. Your back, your legs, your shoulders, all of them feel unsettled. Not in pain exactly, but not at ease either. You lean forward a little, then back again, testing different positions, trying to find something that works. But nothing really does. Because there's no structure here, no support, just uneven straw and cold stone. In many medieval prison cells, proper bedding didn't exist. Prisoners often had to rest on straw, bare ground, or whatever minimal materials were available, if anything at all. Historians still argue how consistently even straw was provided, but one thing remains clear: comfort was not a priority. You exhale slowly, your body adjusting again, your movements becoming smaller, more efficient, because trying too many positions only wastes energy. And energy matters here. You lean your shoulder gently against the wall, angling your body just enough to distribute your weight more evenly. It helps, a little, not enough to feel good, but enough to feel better. You close your eyes briefly, letting your muscles relax into this new position, and for a moment there's a kind of stillness, a kind of quiet acceptance. But then your body reminds you of something else. Fatigue, not from effort, not from exertion, but from the slow, constant tension of adjusting to discomfort. You open your eyes again, your gaze drifting toward the floor, toward the straw beneath you, because now you're thinking about something simple: rest, sleep. And immediately the idea feels uncertain, because how do you sleep here? On this? In this air? With these sounds? You shift again, lowering yourself slightly, testing the idea of lying down. Your body resists at first, stiff, hesitant, but you ease into it slowly, lowering your weight onto the straw, your head resting awkwardly against your arm. It's uneven, unstable. The cold from the ground seeps through quickly, pressing into your side, your shoulder, your hip. You adjust again, turning slightly, trying to find a position that minimizes it. But there's no perfect angle, only less uncomfortable ones. A strange detail surfaces in your thoughts, something almost distant. In some accounts, prisoners would sleep in short intervals rather than deep rest, their bodies unable to fully relax in such conditions. Historians still argue how much actual sleep people got in environments like this, but the idea feels accurate. You can already sense it. This won't be restful. It will be enough. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, testing it, listening. The silence is still there, but now it feels different. Heavier, because you're no longer moving, no longer distracting yourself. You're just there. A faint sound reaches you, a shift, a scrape, then stillness again. You don't open your eyes, because reacting to every sound doesn't help. It only keeps you awake. You take a slow breath. Inhale. Exhale, focusing on the rhythm again, because rhythm brings calm. Even here. Even now. You adjust your arm slightly beneath your head, trying to create some form of support. It helps. A little. Your body begins to settle again, your muscles loosening just enough to reduce the tension. Not fully, but partially. And that's enough. You remain like that for a while, your thoughts slowing, your awareness narrowing. The smell fades into the background. The cold becomes steady. The discomfort becomes familiar. And for a moment, you almost drift. Not into sleep, but toward it. A quiet edge. A soft boundary between awareness and rest. And then, your body shifts slightly. Just enough to remind you that you're not fully comfortable. Not fully safe. Not fully able to let go. You open your eyes again, just slightly, your gaze unfocused in the dim light. Because sleep here isn't something you fall into easily. It's something you approach slowly, carefully, with hesitation. You push yourself up just a little, returning to a seated position, your body instinctively choosing awareness over rest. Because something inside you still isn't ready to let go completely. Not yet. You sit there again, your breathing steady, your posture relaxed but alert. Inhale, exhale, and as you sit there, your body caught between the need to rest and the inability to fully relax, your mind quietly adjusting to that balance, you begin to understand something important. Rest here isn't about comfort, it's about survival, about taking what little relief you can get without ever fully letting your guard down. Because in a place like this, even sleep becomes uncertain. You remain seated for a moment longer, your body still caught between rest and alertness. That quiet tension stays with you, not overwhelming, just present, like something in the background that never fully disappears. You shift slightly, your legs stretching out just a little before pulling back again, your muscles testing their limits, then settling once more into stillness. Because too much movement reminds you of the discomfort, and too little makes your body stiff, so you find a middle ground. Small adjustments, slow movements, just enough to stay balanced. Your hand drifts across the straw again, your fingers brushing through it absent-mindedly until suddenly you feel something different. Not straw, not stone, something solid. You pause, then reach again, more deliberately this time. Your fingers trace along the shape, cold, smooth in places, rough in others. Metal. You pull your hand back slightly, then lean forward, your eyes narrowing in the dim light as you try to make sense of what you're touching. A ring. Fixed into the wall, low, just above the ground. You move closer, your hand returning to it, exploring its edges more carefully now. It's firmly embedded, not loose, not decorative, purposeful. And immediately, you understand. In many medieval prisons, iron rings, shackles, or chains were attached to walls or floors to restrain prisoners, limiting movement and ensuring they stayed exactly where they were placed. Historians still argue how commonly restraints were used in all prisons, but evidence shows they were a frequent feature, especially for those considered dangerous or important. You sit back slowly, your mind processing what that means, because right now, you're not attached to it. But you could be, easily, at any moment. You glance toward the door again, still closed, still silent, and for the first time, a different kind of awareness settles in, not fear, not panic, just understanding. Your freedom of movement here is temporary, conditional. You look back at the iron ring, your gaze lingering for a moment longer than before, Because now, it's not just an object, it's a possibility. You shift slightly away from it, creating a small distance, even though you know the distance doesn't really change anything. But your body reacts anyway. Instinctively, you lean back against the wall again, your breathing steady, your thoughts quieter now, more focused, because this is another layer. Another piece of the system. This place isn't just about holding you, it's about controlling you. Completely. A strange detail surfaces in your mind, something oddly specific. In some accounts, prisoners were sometimes chained not only for security, but also to prevent escape during sleep or moments of reduced awareness. Historians still argue how consistently this was practiced, but the idea itself fits everything you've experienced so far. Nothing here is left to chance. You pull your knees in slightly, your body instinctively moving away from the idea of being fixed in place, even though nothing has changed physically. Because the knowledge alone is enough. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, and once again your body begins to settle, because reacting too strongly doesn't help. Understanding does. You glance around the cell again, your eyes moving slowly from one point to another. The walls, the straw, the door, the faint light above. And now, the iron ring. Each element has revealed itself one at a time. Nothing hidden, just waiting to be noticed. You run your fingers lightly along your arm again, grounding yourself, reminding yourself that you still have control over something, your movements, your breathing, your awareness, because control matters, even in small ways. Another faint sound reaches you. This time, it's softer, more distant, almost like a chain shifting somewhere far away. You pause, listen, but it doesn't come again. You don't react, because now you understand that not every sound needs a response. Some things just exist. You lean your head back once more, your eyes half closing, your breathing returning to that steady rhythm. Inhale, exhale, and slowly the tension fades. Not completely, but enough. Enough to think clearly again, enough to remain calm. And as you sit there, your mind no longer focused on what might happen, but simply aware of what could, you begin to understand something important. Freedom here isn't absolute. It's temporary, limited, and easily taken away. And once you realize that, even the ability to move a few steps feels like something you shouldn't take for granted. You stay where you are, your body still, your breathing steady, your thoughts quieter now. Inhale, exhale. The cell hasn't changed, the walls remain cold, the straw remains uneven, the faint light above still barely reaches you, and yet something feels different, because time has passed, not in a way you can measure, but in a way you can feel. Your body is more settled, your senses more adjusted, your mind less reactive, and that's when you hear it. Footsteps, distant at first, soft, measured. You don't move, because you're not sure yet, but then they come again, closer this time, more defined, the sound of leather against stone, a slow, steady rhythm moving through the corridor outside. You sit up slightly, your posture straightening, your attention sharpening, because this is new, this is different. The footsteps stop, right outside your door. You don't speak, you don't shift, you just wait. There's a brief pause, then a faint metallic sound, a latch, a lock. You hear it clearly now, and then the door opens, not quickly, not dramatically, just enough. A narrow gap. Light spills in, brighter than anything you've seen so far, cutting through the dimness of your cell. You instinctively squint, your eyes adjusting. A figure stands in the doorway, not fully visible, just a shape, still, uninterested, watching. You don't move, because there's nothing to do, and then, without a word, something is pushed through the opening. A small object. It lands on the ground with a soft, dull sound. The door closes again. The light disappears. The lock clicks. And just like that, the moment is over. You remain still for a second longer, your eyes slowly readjusting to the dim light, because everything happened quickly, quietly, without explanation. You look down at the object. A bowl. Rough, wooden, simple. You lean forward, reaching for it carefully, your fingers wrapping around its edge. It's light, almost empty. But not quite. You bring it closer, your eyes narrowing slightly as you try to make out what's inside. It's not much. A small portion of something thick, dull in color, unremarkable. In many medieval prisons, food provided to prisoners was minimal, just enough to keep them alive. Meals often consisted of basic porridge, coarse bread, or whatever was available, with little concern for quality or nutrition. Historians still argue how consistent food provisions were across different prisons, but most accounts agree it wasn't meant to satisfy. You hold the bowl for a moment, your mind processing what you're looking at. Because this is your meal. No choice, no variation, just this. You hesitate, not out of fear, but out of unfamiliarity. Because you don't recognize it, not fully. You tilt the bowl slightly, observing the texture, the thickness. It doesn't smell strong, just bland, neutral. You take a slow breath, then carefully you bring it closer and taste it. The flavor is simple, almost non-existent, grain-like, soft, a little rough, but edible. You pause for a moment, letting your senses adjust, because this isn't about enjoyment, it's about function. You take another small bite, then another, slowly, not rushing, because there's no reason to, and because something in you understands this needs to last. A strange thought crosses your mind, something oddly specific. In some historical accounts, prisoners would ration their food instinctively, even when portions were small, unsure when the next meal would come. Historians still argue how regular feeding schedules were, but the uncertainty itself shaped behavior. You lower the bowl slightly, looking at what remains. Not much, but enough. You take another bite, slower this time, your body accepting the food not because it wants to, but because it needs to. The texture remains the same, the taste unchanged. But your reaction softens. Because hunger doesn't ask for variety, it accepts what's given. You finish the last of it, your movement steady, controlled. Then you lower the empty bowl to the ground beside you. There's nothing more to do with it, no instructions. No collection, just there. You sit back again, your body settling, your breathing steady. Inhale, exhale, and slowly you feel it. Not fullness, but enough. Enough to continue, enough to maintain. Another faint sound reaches you, a step. Then silence again. The guard is gone. The corridor returns to stillness. And just like that, you're alone again. You glance at the empty bowl beside you, then back at the room. Because now you understand something new. This place doesn't operate on comfort, or fairness, or explanation. It operates on necessity, the bare minimum, and nothing more. You rest your hands loosely on your knees, your posture relaxed, your mind calm. Because reacting to it won't change it. Accepting it makes it easier. And as you sit there, your body nourished just enough to continue, your mind adjusting once again to the rhythm of this place, you begin to understand something important. Survival here isn't about satisfaction, it's about acceptance, taking what's given, enduring what's not, and continuing, no matter how little you receive. You sit quietly after the meal, your hands resting loosely on your knees, your breathing slow and even. Inhale, exhale. The taste of the food fades quickly, leaving behind something neutral, almost empty. But your body feels it. A small shift, a quiet sense of continuation, not satisfaction, just enough. Your eyes drift toward the empty bowl beside you, simple, rough, already forgotten by whoever placed it there. You reach for it again, not out of hunger, but curiosity, because now there's something else you haven't fully considered. Water. You lift the bowl slightly, tilting it, just to be sure. Nothing. Dry. Of course. Food without water feels incomplete, and that thought settles quietly in your mind, because thirst is different from hunger. It grows faster, feels sharper. You swallow slowly, your throat suddenly more aware of itself. Dry, not uncomfortable yet, but noticeable. You set the bowl back down, your gaze drifting toward the door again. Still closed, still silent. And now, you're waiting. Not for something dramatic, just something necessary. In many medieval prisons, access to clean drinking water was inconsistent. Prisoners were often given water separately from food, sometimes at irregular intervals, depending on the facility and the attention of the guards. Historians still argue how reliable these routines were, but one thing is clear. Water wasn't guaranteed. You lean back against the wall again, your head resting lightly against the cold stone. The chill seeps in immediately. Familiar now, expected. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, because there's nothing to do but wait. a strange detail surfaces in your thoughts again. In some places, water provided to prisoners wasn't always clean, drawn from nearby wells or storage containers that weren't regularly maintained. Historians still argue how often this led to illness, but the risk was always present. You close your eyes briefly, your mind settling into that quiet rhythm again, because thinking too far ahead doesn't help. Staying present does. A faint sound reaches you, footsteps again, distant, then closer. You open your eyes slowly, your attention sharpening just a little, because now you recognize the pattern, the approach, the pause, the presence outside your door. You don't move, you don't speak, you just wait. The latch shifts, the door opens slightly, just enough, and this time, something else is pushed through, a small container. You watch as it slides across the stone floor, stopping near the center of the cell. The door closes again. The lock clicks, and just like before, the moment ends. You remain still for a second, your eyes adjusting again, your awareness focused. Then you reach for it, carefully. The container is simple, wooden, roughly shaped, but heavier than the bowl was. You lift it slowly, bringing it closer, peering inside. Water, clear enough to see, still, quiet. You pause, because now everything you've learned returns at once. The well, the uncertainty, the possibility. You tilt the container slightly, watching how the water moves. Nothing unusual, nothing obvious, but that doesn't mean anything. You hesitate, not out of fear, but awareness. Because this is a choice, drink or wait, and waiting has its own cost. You bring it closer, your hand steady, your breathing calm. Then, slowly, you take a sip. The water is cool, slightly metallic, not unpleasant, but not pure either. You pause for a moment, letting your body respond. Nothing immediate, no reaction, just acceptance. You take another small sip, then another, not rushing, because like the food, this needs to last. A strange thought crosses your mind again, something practical. In uncertain conditions, people often rationed water instinctively, even when they didn't know when more would come. Historians still argue how predictable water access was in prisons like this, but the behavior makes sense. You lower the container slightly, looking at what remains, still enough. For now, you set it down carefully beside you, within reach. Because distance matters now, everything you might need has to stay close. You lean back again, your body settling into the same position, your breathing returning to its steady rhythm. Inhale, exhale. The thirst fades, the dryness softens, and once again your body finds balance, not perfect, but stable. Another faint sound reaches you, a distant shift, then silence. The guard is gone, the corridor returns to stillness. And just like that, you're alone again, but not completely. Because now, you have something, food, water, small things, but important. You glance toward the container beside you, then back at the room. Because now, you understand something else. Nothing here is constant. Everything arrives in moments, then disappears again. And you have to make it last. You rest your hands lightly against your legs, your posture relaxed, your mind calm. Because reacting doesn't change the system. Adapting to it does. And as you sit there, your thirst eased, your awareness steady, your understanding growing with each small experience, you begin to understand something important. Survival here isn't about abundance. It's about managing scarcity, taking what little you're given, and stretching it just far enough to keep going. You sit quietly, enter the small container of water resting within arm's reach, the empty bowl beside it, both now part of your space. Not objects anymore, resources. You glance between them without moving your head much, your eyes doing most of the work, conserving effort in a way that already feels natural. Because here, even small movements matter. Inhale, exhale. The rhythm continues, steady and slow, and for a while nothing changes, until something does. A sound. Faint, but different. Not the soft scrape of movement, not the distant cough you heard before. This one is sharper, shorter. A quick tap. You freeze, not out of fear, but attention. Because this isn't random. It comes again. Tap. Pause. Tap. Tap. You tilt your head slightly, listening more carefully now, your senses sharpening in response. Because this feels intentional. You don't move closer to the wall. You don't speak. You just listen. Another pause. Then tap. From the wall to your left. You shift your gaze toward it slowly, your body staying still. Because now you're certain. It's coming from the other side, from someone. In many medieval prisons, prisoners sometimes found ways to communicate through walls tapping, scratching, or whispering through cracks if the structure allowed it. Historians still argue how common or effective this was, but the idea appears often enough to feel real. You sit there for a moment longer, your mind weighing the options. Respond, or stay silent. Because responding means acknowledging, and acknowledging means connection. You raise your hand slowly, your fingers hovering just above the stone surface. You hesitate. Because once you do this, there's no taking it back. But the silence around you feels heavier now, and something inside you leans toward breaking it. Just slightly. You tap once. Soft. Controlled. Then you pull your hand back, your breathing steady, your body still. You wait. A pause. Then, tap. A reply. Simple. Clear. You don't smile. You don't react outwardly, but something shifts inside you. Because this changes things. Not the environment, not the conditions, but the experience. You tap again. Once. Then stop. Another pause. Then 2 taps. You don't know what it means. There's no shared code. No agreed system. Just sound. Presence. A strange detail surfaces in your mind again. Something almost human in its simplicity. Even without language, people find ways to connect, to signal awareness, to remind each other they're not alone. Historians still argue how meaningful these interactions were in prisons like this, but the instinct itself is undeniable. You rest your hand lightly against the wall now, not tapping, just there, because contact, even indirect, feels different, grounding, real. Another tap comes, softer this time, slower, then silence. You don't respond immediately, because you don't need to. The exchange has already happened, and that's enough. You lean back again, your body settling into the straw, your head resting lightly against the wall. But now, the wall feels different. Not just stone, not just barrier, but connection, thin, limited, but present. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, and for the first time since you arrived, the silence doesn't feel empty. It feels shared. You close your eyes briefly, your body relaxing just a little more than before, because something small has changed, something subtle, but meaningful. You're still alone. But not completely. A faint sound drifts through the space again. Not tapping this time. A low murmur. Difficult to make out, but human. You don't try to understand it, because understanding isn't the point. Recognition is. You open your eyes again, your gaze soft, unfocused. Because now, your attention doesn't need to search for something new. It can rest, just a little. You reach for the water container again, taking a small sip, your movements slow and deliberate. Because even now, routine matters. You set it back down carefully, your hand lingering for a moment before pulling away. Because everything you have here is temporary, but still important. You shift slightly, adjusting your position, your body finding that same balance again between comfort and stillness. Because now, you understand something more. Survival here isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, subtle, and even the smallest connection can make a difference. Another faint tap comes. You respond. Once. A pause. A reply. Still there. And as you sit there, your breathing steady, your awareness calm, your presence quietly shared with someone you'll never see, you begin to understand something important. You don't need much to feel less alone. Just a signal, a response, a reminder that someone else is still there too. You keep your hand resting lightly against the wall for a moment longer, not tapping now, just feeling the solid, unmoving surface. But it no longer feels entirely empty, because now you know something exists on the other side. Another presence, another quiet rhythm, just like yours. You slowly pull your hand back, letting it rest again on your knee, your posture relaxing into stillness. Inhale, exhale. The air feels the same, but your awareness of it, softer, less sharp, because your mind has something else to hold on to now, something beyond the walls. And yet another thought begins to form, slower, heavier, because connection doesn't remove reality. It just sits beside it. You glance toward the door again, your eyes lingering on its rough wooden surface, the metal bands running across it like silent reminders. Because everything here still depends on something outside your control. The food, the water, the door itself, and most of all, the guards. You shift slightly, your body straightening just a little, your attention sharpening in a different way now, because until now, they've been distant, almost mechanical, appear, deliver, leave. But that doesn't mean they're neutral. In many medieval prisons, guards held significant power over prisoners, not just controlling access to food and water, but also determining treatment, discipline, and sometimes even survival itself. Historians still argue how varied guard behavior was across regions and social classes, but one thing remains clear: their attitude could change everything. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, because this isn't something you've experienced directly yet, but you understand it. The potential, the unpredictability, a strange detail drifts through your thoughts, something almost quiet in its implication. In some accounts, prisoners relied on small acts of obedience, silence, or even simple non-resistance to avoid drawing attention from guards. Historians still argue how effective this was, but the idea fits. Less attention means less risk. You lower your gaze slightly, your posture softening again, your body instinctively moving towards stillness. Because stillness feels safer. Predictable. You don't call out. You don't test the door. You don't create unnecessary noise, because right now you don't know what kind of response you would get, and uncertainty is something you've already learned to respect. Another faint sound reaches you. Footsteps. Distant, but familiar now. You don't react outwardly, but inwardly, you notice. Your breathing remains steady, your posture unchanged, because reacting too quickly draws attention, and attention is something you're learning to manage. The footsteps pass, not stopping, not slowing, just moving along the corridor, and then fading. You exhale slowly, your body releasing a tension you didn't fully notice building, because even without direct interaction, their presence changes the space. You glance again at the door, then back at the room, because now your awareness includes something new, not just what is happening, but what could. You reach for the water again, taking a small sip, your movements controlled, your attention still balanced between action and awareness. You set it down gently, your hand lingering for just a moment before returning to rest, because everything here becomes deliberate, measured, even something as simple as drinking. You shift slightly, adjusting your position, your body finding that same familiar balance again, because repetition creates stability, and stability makes things easier to manage. Another faint tap comes from the wall. You respond. Once, a pause, a reply, still there, and somehow that small exchange feels even more important now. Because while the guards represent control, this connection represents something else. Choice. You didn't have to respond, but you did, and they did too. A quiet understanding, unspoken, but real. You lean your head back again, your eyes half closing, your breathing steady. Inhale, exhale, the cold remains, the smell remains, the uncertainty remains. But your mind feels more balanced, because now you're not just reacting, you're adapting, choosing, adjusting, and as you sit there, your awareness no longer overwhelmed but quietly organized, your thoughts steady, your body calm. You begin to understand something important. Not everything here is under your control, but how you respond to it is, and sometimes that's enough to keep going. You remain still for a while, your body resting in that familiar balance you've been slowly building, not comfortable, not relaxed, but stable. And here, stability is enough. Inhale, exhale, your breathing continues in that slow, even rhythm, grounding you, keeping everything steady, because without it, your thoughts might drift too far. And drifting too far here doesn't help. The silence returns again, but now it feels different, not empty, not heavy, just present, like something that exists alongside you instead of pressing against you. You shift slightly, your shoulders adjusting against the cold stone wall, your muscles responding with a faint stiffness. It's been a while now, you don't know how long, but your body knows, because time here isn't measured by light or sound, it's measured by feeling, by stillness, by waiting. And slowly, that begins to affect you. You open your eyes fully, your gaze drifting across the room again. The same walls, the same straw, the same door, nothing has changed, and that's exactly the problem. because your mind expects change, movement, progress. But here, there is none. In many medieval prisons, prisoners often lost track of time completely due to the lack of natural light, routine variation, or external reference points. Historians still argue how quickly this disorientation set in, but accounts frequently mention the same experience. Time begins to blur. You sit there, your mind trying to mark something, anything, a moment, a shift, a pattern, but there isn't one, not clearly, and that creates something subtle but powerful, uncertainty. You take a slow breath, inhale, exhale, trying to anchor yourself again, because your body is still steady, still present, but your mind is searching. A strange thought drifts through, something almost instinctive. When people lose track of time, they often try to create their own markers, counting breaths, repeating movements, focusing on patterns that don't really exist. Historians still argue how effective these mental strategies were, but the instinct itself feels natural. You glance down at your hands, still, resting quietly on your legs. You lift one slightly, then lower it again, a simple motion, but something to notice. You tap your fingers lightly against your knee, once, twice, then stop, because even that small rhythm feels artificial, forced. You lean your head back again, your eyes drifting upward too.